Hello and welcome to 3 Minute Gaming. I'm Nathan, and today I'm going to tell you if this game's worth your time and bandwidth. Today's game is Slayers X Terminal Aftermath Vengeance of the Slayer. Zane, edgelord 90s kid, made a game in 98, and now it's been finished and released with plenty of that late 90s, early 2000s dude. But does it boom, nuke, and doom? Let's find out. Slayers X Terminal, okay, yeah, I'm not saying the whole thing every time. Slayers X is a first-person boomer shooter very similar in style to games like Duke Nukem 3D, with an emphasis on its environmental storytelling and overall aesthetic. The game was made in quotations, by Zane, a character from the excellent 90s website detective game Hypnospace Outlaw. Zane was basically that kid you knew in the 90s who listened to Limp Bizkit, watched R-rated movies despite being 15, and was generally both the coolest and most obnoxious friend you could have, but you still hung out with him because his dad let him put Duke Nukem 3D and Doom on the family computer. The joke here is that the game is a massive throwback to the 90s aesthetic, attitude, and sense of humor that kind of person would enjoy if they managed to make an insane Doom wad. It doesn't do anything cheap like reference real-world stuff either. It's more attempting to emulate the era generally. The story itself is how Zane is just the coolest of the Slayers, whose master is killed in the first 5 minutes, as well as his mom, Rip, by the Psychos with a K, which are basically a bunch of bad guys, probably controlled by Zane's former convenience store boss. So Zane has to avenge the Slayers and his mom by killing a bunch of guys while yelling one-liners that probably sounded really cool to a 13-year-old. The gameplay is fairly bog-standard, fast-paced boomer shooter, complete with an arsenal of weapons like pistols, a shotgun that uses broken glass for ammo, so shoot those windows, an RPG that shoots cans of slime that attract friendly rats, and 2 hack blood weapons. Hack blood is a resource you gain for killing enemies and can be either used in a melee weapon or a ranged item that can shoot a Kamehameha beam or an explosive launcher. The game is fairly short, but the levels are entertaining and try to keep things fresh, from Zane's backyard to a rich cul-de-sac barbecue to inside of a computer circa 1998. The game's roster of enemies is also pretty small, but since this game isn't too long, they don't wear out their welcome. And honestly, not much more to say about this. If you played Duke Nukem 3D, this gameplay is identical, with its main draw being the goofy aesthetic, jokes, and weird nostalgic memories to the 90s. So what did I like about Slayers X? Well, the shooting overall is very solid, with the weapons different enough to necessitate mixing up strats based on the enemies you encounter, and movement feeling great. Additionally, the level design is really good here, with me rarely getting lost as the game will either guide you well through its levels or literally signpost what to do next as an inside joke, which is pretty funny. And lastly, like Hypnospace Outlaw, this game really manages to make me, a late 90s, early 2000s teen, feel right at home with the attitude and aesthetic from back in those days. I even turned on some old Limp Bizkit and Linkin Park to get the full effect. When it comes to the bad, also like Hypnospace Outlaw, if you aren't nostalgic for this era of both the games and the attitudes that came along with being a teenager around that time, the overall tone might be more confusing or annoying than fun. What I'm saying is this is a millennials only game, no zoomers allowed, sorry guys, go back to TikTok. Additionally, while it does do its boomy shooty pretty well, it doesn't really have anything new to bring to the table. This is a straight throwback game with no bells and whistles except its aesthetic, which some might find too basic. And speaking of basic, the game is really short. I beat it the first time in under 3 hours, and the second time in just over an hour. Y'all know I don't actually mind short games, but for its price, it's worth keeping in mind if you aren't getting it through Game Pass. As you know, I rate games here on a 3-point scale: must play, maybe consider, don't bother. I think Slayers X is a maybe consider, but is definitely a hidden gem. Given the game's length and basic gameplay, as well as the fact that it's targeting a very specific demographic, I can't give a blanket must play to it, though I would love to, because for me personally, I adored it. If you're like me and rapidly approaching 40 and wondering where the hell your life went, you are the perfect demographic to check this game out and have a delightful nostalgia trip with my man Zane. But if you're one of them punks that keeps calling The Offspring dad rock, you'll probably still get a kick out of it, but your mileage may vary. It's not dad rock, The Offspring are still cool, and stay off my lawn. That's all I have for you today. Thank you so much for watching. Are you gonna check out Slayers X? If you did or you're thinking about it, please let me know in the comments. But regardless, all you geriatric millennials should get out there and enjoy some boomy shooty with my man Zane.